Hello again, my DIY loving friends, and welcome to Medicated Housewife DIY, where crafting and mental health come together. It's a brand new year filled with creative possibilities. We're bringing you exciting new DIY projects using Dollar Tree tumbling tower blocks to create stunning high-end decor. Get ready to be inspired. Maybe 2024 is your most stylish year yet. Now, what are we waiting for? Let's go DIY together. For this DIY, I have two sets of 24 tumbling tower blocks from Dollar Tree plus a couple of extra blocks because that's how I roll. I like a couple of extra. I'm painting all the blocks using this folk art antique wax, which I will link for you in the description box below, and I paint all sides of the blocks as you see here, and I always find it's easier if you have to paint a bunch of blocks at one time to do it assembly line style. Just do each side of all the blocks at once. Just a suggestion. After I paint them with the wax, I rub them with a dry paper towel just to wipe off the excess wax and help them dry quicker. I'm using two glass tea light holders that come in a pack of 4 from Dollar Tree, and I need to size the blocks to fit around the glass, which is wider at the top. So I place it upside down, place 4 blocks around it for my first row. Then I place 4 more blocks on top of that row, as you see me doing right here, and I glue them down with some super glue wood glue from Dollar Tree, and that is going to be my second row. My third row is the exact same way with 4 blocks placed in between the 4 blocks in the row under it. We do the next 3 rows, which are rows 4, 5, and 6, the same way. And the finished candle holder is 6 rows high, as you'll see here in a minute, 6 rows of 4 blocks each, which is going to equal 24 blocks total for each of the candle holders. We're making 2. I make a second candle holder with the other 24 blocks, the same as the first. It's 6 rows of 4 blocks, and wait for both of them to dry. I have a roll of this paper raffia I got on Amazon, and I'll link it for you below, but you can find raffia at Dollar Tree as well. I cut 8 pieces of the raffia and I unravel them, which is really just unfolding the tightly folded paper in the roll as you see me doing here. I like the raffia better in its natural state when it's all unfolded. Once all 8 pieces are unraveled, I'm going to begin wrapping 1 piece of raffia around one of the 4 sections of the blocks in the candle holder, as you can see me doing right here. I cut 8 pieces of the raffia because each candle holder will be wrapped in 4 places. I use a dab of hot glue at the beginning and at the end of the wrapping to secure that raffia in place. Then I repeat that wrapping 7 more times for a total of 8 wrapped sections on the 2 candle holders, 4 on each, and hopefully that makes sense to you. You can always pause or replay the video if you want to. And that's all there is to these 2 tumbling tower block raffia wrapped candle holders, and I was so surprised how much I love the combination of the antique wax painted blocks and the natural color of the raffia together. I think these candle holders work virtually for any season. They're very neutral. They can be rustic or maybe even farmhouse style, slightly boho possibly. I feel like you can use regular candles in them if you're watching them, but battery operated candles are a safer bet if you plan on not watching them, so better safe than sorry. For this next DIY, I'm using a total of 114 tumbling tower blocks from Dollar Tree, which is about 1.5 boxes of the 72-pack blocks. I'm using super glue wood glue, also from Dollar Tree. I start by placing 6 blocks in a hexagon shape with just the corners that are touching. As you can see me do right here, those 6 will be my first row. The second row is also 6 blocks, and I'm placing them on top of where the 2 blocks in the first row touch. I place the blocks in this second row so they are slightly further out than the first row, which is hard to explain, but if you watch as I place them, you will understand. Each of the 6 blocks in row 2 are centered over the point where the corners meet on row 1, and that is how I glue the blocks in row 2 down. After the second row has had a few minutes to set, I begin the third row, and we are following the same pattern as the second row, so the third row of 6 blocks, which, spoiler alert, all the rows are 6 blocks, easy peasy. So the third row of 6 blocks are placed over the space between the 2 blocks in row 2 and slightly outward further. They're jutting out, as you can see here. Sometimes it really makes more sense if you watch it rather than trying to picture what I'm saying. I can sometimes use a lot of words to say very little. It's a curse or a gift, depending on who you ask, but just watch what I'm doing here and follow along. I try to line up the blocks I'm gluing with the one corner of each of the 2 blocks under it, and I hope that makes sense to you. I'm doing the fourth row of 6 blocks again, the same way. We're still jutting outward slightly. fifth row is another 6 blocks placed the same way, jutting outward. And if it's too quick to follow, please pause and replay the video if you find that helpful. Sometimes I have to speed up the video so it's not like an hour long, but I still want to show you all the steps. So if pausing and repeating helps you follow along, you should definitely do that. The sixth row is more of the same. It's 6 blocks jutting outward, and you can see we are starting to get a bit of a bowl or like a bubble rounded type shape, and that is what we are going for. On the 7th row, I'm going to start placing the blocks in line with the blocks that are 1 row beneath it. So we're no longer bringing them outward to make that rounded structure. We're going to bring the whole structure back to where it started, and that begins here with row 7. Row 8 is going to follow along with row 7, and we are still lining up the blocks so the structure comes back inward where it started. So no more jutting out like a bowl. We're bringing it back inward like a rounded bubble shape. And I really hope that makes sense to you. Just keep watching the way it comes together, and I promise you'll understand what I'm talking about. I stop at that 8 rows, and off camera I made a second structure the exact same way as the first one. So now we have 2 identical sides that are both 8 rows tall. I waited for those both to dry for a couple of hours. I take one of the 2 identical bowl shapes, I'm going to turn it upside down with the smaller hexagon facing upwards, and I begin in 9th row using 6 more blocks. They are placed in the same pattern that we've been doing and straight above the blocks on the row beneath it. We are keeping this 9th row in line with the smaller side of the structure. We are just building up on it to make it taller. I add a 10th row, and again, 6 more blocks following the pattern and keeping them in line with the row that's beneath them. I'm really just trying to make this side taller. The 11th row is the last row that we're doing, and we do it the same way as the 10th and the 9th rows that we just did. Then I'm going to set this aside to fully dry. We are not going to add any additional rows to the other half, the other structure that we did. This one has 11 rows, and the other structure has 8 rows total. Next, I take this 3-inch wood circle I got on Amazon, and I'll link it for you below. And these 2 wood craft sticks from Dollar Tree. I cut one of the sticks in half, and I'm going to take that full stick and I glue it standing on its side across the middle of the circle. I just eyeballed it. You can measure it if you prefer. Sometimes I'm just too lazy. Initially, I took the 2 half craft sticks and I glued them down in a plus sign shape, but you will see later that I had to adjust that to more of a narrow X kind of a shape, and there's my narrow X shape, and I put that aside to fully dry. I'm using a mixture of folk art antique wax and plain water to create a stain, and I'm using that to paint both of the tumbling tower block structure pieces that I just made. So we're painting both sides of the structures inside and out. Also, both sides of the wood circle with the craft stick X, those will be painted with the antique wax mixture as well. And then I'm going to let all of those pieces fully dry. Once they've dried, I take that wood circle with the craft sticks and I place it inside the narrow side of the 11-row tower block structure. As you see me doing here, placing the craft sticks to fit into the grooves between the blocks, and that fit is snug, but you can add a little glue if you want it even more secure. And then I place the other side of the structure, that's the 8-row side, the smaller one, to fit into or onto the bottom piece, and I'm using some wood glue to attach it. Following our same pattern with each row of blocks sitting in between the 2 blocks beneath it, it fits perfectly right on top. And I'm going to place some heavy things on top of that to hold it together as it dries. Lastly, I grabbed some folk art white chalk paint, which I will link for you below, and using a dry chip brush, I gave the whole project a light distress painting with the chalk paint, just to give it a little bit of character and aging, and I did a little bit of distress painting inside the top of that structure as well. And this is my tumbling tower block pedestal candle holder, which can also be a decorative bowl or even a plant holder. Basically, any decorative item that you want can go in here. I really like the shape of this candle holder. It reminds me of a castle or something like that. Just a really interesting piece to add to your decor and to make Dollar Tree tumbling tower blocks a bit more upscale, in my opinion. This next DIY is using 25 tumbling tower blocks from Dollar Tree, and we are gluing them together using super glue, wood glue, also from Dollar Tree. I'm gluing them in a woven looking pattern, and it's really pretty simple, but I think it's easier to follow by watching than by me trying to explain this pattern to you. So watch the pattern placement as I do it, and just pause the video and replay it if you want to follow along that way. But basically, just watch the way I'm putting it together and you will understand the simplicity that's behind it. And once it's all totally glued together, I'm going to set aside the whole piece for it to fully dry. I have this large wood panel from Dollar Tree Plus that I'm using as a frame, and I tape up the inside. Then I'm using some folk art antique wax to paint the frame. I paint the inside frame wall, and then I'm going to paint the front of the frame, and then I'm going to paint the outside side of that frame, and then I allow the whole thing to fully dry. I remove the tape and I'm using some folk art white chalk paint and a dry chip brush to lightly do a dry whitewash using up and down strokes across the inside of the wood panel. And then once I finished the vertical brush strokes, I decided to do the same dry brushing with the chalk paint going across those brush strokes to make a little bit of like a light crosshatch kind of a look with just a hint of the white paint, but a lot of the wood tone still coming through. I pour some very strong instant coffee into a small cup, and I'm using that to stain all the blocks that are in the vertical position so that they all get a slightly darker brown wood effect. And I'm just doing that to the blocks going in that same direction. I also make sure that the stain goes on the sides and the ends of those same blocks as well. Then using a mixture of white chalk paint and water, I do a couple of coats of whitewash on all the blocks going in the other direction, also making sure to do the sides and the ends of those blocks with the whitewash as well. When the whitewash blocks dry, I take a dry brush and some antique wax and do a really light distress paint on the edges and a little bit on the front of all those whitewashed blocks, just aging them a little bit. Then using another dry brush, I do a distress paint with the white chalk paint onto those coffee stained blocks, also giving them, giving the darker blocks just some distressed character and a little bit of aging. I take my woven wood blocks and use some hot glue to attach them to the middle of the wood panel frame, and I decided to place them on a diagonal for more visual interest. To accessorize a bit, I grabbed 4 of these wood roses from Dollar Tree, as well as 4 pieces of leaves that I removed from Dollar Tree Greenery picks. I hot glued the 4 leaves onto the 4 corners of the frame, followed by a wood rose onto each of the leaves in all of the 4 corners of the frame to finish the look. And this is my woven wood block wall art, and I feel like this wooden wall art has a lot of farmhouse qualities and charm. I'm not totally sold on the wood roses. There may be a better way to accessorize, but I really like the woven wood look of this piece. And to start off the new year right, I want to know what you think. Let me know in the comments which one of these Dollar Tree tumbling tower block DIYs was your favorite and why. You know I love hearing from all of you. And if you've enjoyed this DIY video, there's another one waiting for you. Just click the link on your screen for more Medicated Housewife DIYs. Also, I'd love for you to join our little crafting family and subscribe. Thanks for watching this first video of the new year, and until next time, my name is Sarah, I'm the Medicated Housewife, and crafting is my medication.